This is the Catholic with a Bible podcast. I am Tad, a Catholic who, yes, reads his Bible. So today I just want to talk about movies for a little bit. Within the last 10 or so years, one of my favorite movies was Les Misérables. If you can tell by the way how I just said that, it's a French movie. I don't have a French accent. I don't really know how to properly pronounce French titles. So buckle up. I'm about to mispronounce a lot of stuff. So Les Mis is the story of the French Revolution, I believe. And it takes place in the 1700s or so. Let me just look it up. Okay. So the story of Les Mis takes place in the early 1800s in France. If you were to watch the movie, it's about a guy who is released from prison from a petty crime that he was really, really overly charged for, and kind of resets his life and then all the things that happen around him, as well as the war, the revolution, the whole bit. But the one thing I found really interesting about that movie is when a song comes up, because it's a musical, it seemed like they had these really strange long camera shots. Like, this seems kind of dull, until you ultimately realize everyone is actually performing in real time in the movie, rather than most musicals where they would kind of do this whole studio thing beforehand. They record all the songs, then they lip sync to themselves. And Hugh Jackman is awesome. Huge fan of Hugh Jackman. He just does his thing. This man is able to be Wolverine as well as a musical man. Like, you might not know this, but he would have been the lead role in Phantom of the Opera if he was not too busy being Wolverine in X-Men. That's amazing to me. So within this movie, one thing that you'll notice, though, is just there's so many figures, there's so many people. It seems like there's so much detail that's just kind of under the surface. But the reason why, more than just being under the surface, these characters have very, very robust backstories. If you were to read the book Les Misérables, it is over 1,000 pages long. It is one of those books that is on my bucket list that at some point I'm just going to finish it. You can read the abridged version, and it's, only a couple hundred pages. I think maybe 2 or 3. But otherwise, this thing is massive, and it's got a lot of detail. A lot of it I really like. But then there's also aspects where you're going to have, there's a whole 19 chapter section where it's just the events of the battle at Waterloo. Super random, super unnecessary as far as I'm concerned, but he felt like it was important to the story. And during these events, this is where Jean Valjean was. Pretty early on in the movie, after Hugh Jackman's character, Jean Valjean, is released, he goes off and he's trying to find a place to stay. And he's been marked as a dangerous man for the actions that he took, which was just petty theft. It was like stealing a loaf of bread, and it's completely wrecked his entire life. So no one really wants to have him around until there is a bishop whose name I'm going to butcher, Bishop Muriel, I believe. He takes him in, says, "Hey, you can stay here with us. It's okay. I know you don't have much. You don't have very many options. Go ahead, please stay with us." So he does, and us being him and a couple of nuns. And after a little bit, Jean Valjean tries to steal some silver from the church, but he's caught by the police, and the bishop says, No, it's okay. That was actually a gift. And here, take this as well. Take these candlesticks, these very, very valuable candlesticks. After the fact, he just kind of tells Jean Valjean, you need to take the time to become an honest man. I've given you another chance. Don't blow this. I had seen the movie already, and I knew I want to read this book. I want to see what this is all about. So I got on Kindle because it's a book that's in the public domain, which, long story short, old books you can read for free on Kindle. And this book, I started reading it. I got like a couple pages in, and I was just thinking, this isn't right. This isn't the right story. It says I'm several pages in, and I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know his story at all. And as I kept going, it eventually clicked. It looks like this man had a difficult upbringing, and then he became a bishop. Like, all right, that's cool. He's a bishop now. Maybe it's that one guy who gave Jean Valjean a second chance. Turns out it was. And as I read this, I got, oh man, I think it took maybe 50 or 60 pages before it went off to anyone else's story. The whole first section is just the backstory of this bishop who he had this very Mother Teresa way of living, but he lived very minimally. He didn't want much. He wanted to give to the poor. He wanted to give to everyone else. He wanted to make sure that everyone was taken care of. He had very few things that he really cared for that he really thought was important because he just knew these people are what matters. I mean, give glory to God. Absolutely. And when not doing that, give to others. So it's a really strange thing to kind of realize, wow, this little moment has a whole backstory behind it. There's this whole thing. It would have just been, oh, this guy kind of gave him a second shot. Like, no, this moment really, this gave him not only another shot, it gave him the forgiveness that he didn't initially receive. He had a whole life that contributed to him in that moment. And that's what's so interesting whenever we look in the Bible, because the same thing is with those characters. So if we watch the movie, Les Misérables, and then we look at the book, that is something that, it's this little snippet here that we see. It was based off of this book, which had this massive backstory. And the same thing happens in the Bible. You have this person who had an event take place, with the source material being his actual life. So when we look at the Bible at a character like Zechariah, he's a priest from the tribe of Levi. It's the priest tribe. This man, he happened to come forward and he was doing his duties. He was doing what he was supposed to do. He went into the temple, and within the temple, he had an angel appear to him, Gabriel. If he knew who this angel was at all, then that would have been a very, very intense moment, because he, being a priest, he would know the backstory of his religion. He would know that in the book of Daniel and the book of Ezekiel, that Gabriel was there. It seems to me, anyways, I could be absolutely wrong, but it seems to me that this man wasn't just randomly picked because of the way he lived, because of his backstory, and of course, because of family lines and things like that. That kind of qualified him. But at the same time, if he was just a garbage person, it could have been any of the other priests from the tribe of Levi that could have had this moment, that could have had this experience. It's just unfortunate that we don't know his backstory. We don't know who he was before. We don't know why all this happened. But when an angel comes to him and says, "You will have a child," he thinks, whoa, how could that be? The angel just tells him, this is going to happen, and your son is going to be a very significant character in the story of salvation. And with someone like Bishop Muriel in mind, it just reminds me that we don't know much about the actual story of these figures, but we do know these figures had a full life, and that full life summed up who they are now, which I find pretty powerful. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the Gospel of Luke and see what I've been talking about this whole time. And keep in mind, I'm not a priest who gives homilies. I'm not a preacher who gives sermons. I'm not going to be talking about high theology. I'm just a Catholic who wants to read his Bible.
Luke chapter 1, verses 5 through 25. In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah of the priestly division of Abijah. His wife was from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Both were righteous in the eyes of God, observing all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blamelessly. But they had no child, because Elizabeth was barren, and both were advanced in years. Once when he was serving as priest in his division's turn before God, according to the practice of the priestly service, he was chosen by lot to enter the sanctuary of the Lord to burn incense. Then, when the whole assembly of the people was praying outside at the hour of the incense offering, the angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right of the altar of incense. Zechariah was troubled by what he saw, and fear came upon him. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall name him John. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He will drink neither wine nor strong drink. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit even from his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God. He will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of fathers toward children and the disobedient to the understanding of the righteous, to prepare a people fit for the Lord. Then Zechariah said to the angel, "How shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is advanced in years." And the angel said to him in reply, "I am Gabriel, who stand before God. I was sent to speak to you and to announce to you this good news. But now you will be speechless and unable to talk until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled at their proper time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and were amazed that he stayed so long in the sanctuary. But when he came out, he was unable to speak to them, and they realized that he had seen a vision in the sanctuary. He was gesturing to them but remained mute. Then, when his days of ministry were completed, he went home. After this time, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and she went into seclusion for 5 months, saying, "So has the Lord done for me at a time when he has seen fit to take away my disgrace before others."